Let's get a bit more on the trade talks with economics professor and a regular on this show, Stephen Hamilton at George Washington University. I want to talk to you about trade, Trump and Musk, but let's start with this clash that we're seeing. These pictures coming in, I'm sure you've seen it there from your home in Washington, but the clashes in LA right now, Stephen Hamilton, what do you make of what you're seeing? It was a big part of the recent election, and it's a clash both in terms of those who are opposed to the immigration stance of Donald Trump, but also the tensions between Democratic Governor Newsom and the Republican White House.
Yeah, g'day, Kieran. Look, civil unrest is never a good sign, particularly when, frankly, US society is a bit of a tinderbox right now with all of the sort of sources of pressure, right, in all of these areas. And I will just point particularly, put the moral or ethical questions aside, I will point to the economic story that underpins this, which is something that not enough people are talking about, frankly. The economic impact of the proposed immigration restrictions, we still don't exactly know how this will go, but some of the economic impacts of those proposed immigration restrictions in the election have the potential to have a significantly worse impact on the US economy than the tariffs. And we know the tariffs are going to have a pretty big negative impact. So, I think this immigration question really does need more attention and more focus. If they end up deporting 10 million, workers, that'll be, frankly, devastating to the US economy.
As you rightly point out, a tinderbox, and we can see these, as I say, these are live pictures coming into us from downtown LA, near a federal building that houses an immigration centre. One of the members of Congress tried to enter that building just in the last little while. She was there with the demonstrators, but it just gives you a sense of when you're talking about the numbers the administration has been aiming to deport, it doesn't happen without some societal, or seismic shift in the society. Because as you know, as many of us who've travelled to the United States knows, that migrant story, and illegal migrants as well, have underpinned a big chunk of the economy there.
It's very difficult for Australians to understand this. As an Australian who lives in the US, in Australia, I think we've formed a consensus against really having a really no tolerance policy against any form of illegal immigration, right? We have we've had this for 20 years, Kieran, you remember as well as anyone does. This has been a continuous political source of sort of friction between the two parties. But we've come out with basically a consensus to get, against any kind of illegal immigration. In the US, it's completely the opposite. There is a sort of a permanent, acceptance, almost a welcoming of illegal immigrants to kind of work on farms, really to be a source of economic power for the US economy, right? Picking fruit in California, right? Filling factories, waiting tables, and these people escape, in many cases, a lot of the safety nets that, US citizens get. Now, you can say, okay, it would be a great idea to take the Australian model and fully outlaw all illegal immigration, but you have to front up to the practical difficulty of doing that, and this is the tip of the iceberg we're seeing in California, but two, the massive economic impact that would have on the US. And I suspect, as this thing starts to unravel, if they do start to clamp down very hard, it'll be another taco moment for Donald Trump, because the economic impact on, businesses and other workers will be pretty massive.
And I know you've been writing in recent days about, and we might leave these pictures up for the moment because some of this stuff is quite extraordinary. It's a moment in history, one way or the other, as Trump tries to deliver on that policy or this pushback, including from the Democratic governor, gains some momentum, both on the street but politically too. We will be watching all of that. And as I say, we'll keep the live pictures up, but I might just shift our focus a little to turbulence of another sort. This was with Elon Musk, and I know you've written at length about the big, beautiful bill, Musk's problems with that, and how it really didn't sit comfortably with him in relation to his position with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. He was leaving the White House, it seems, on good terms, but then it erupted, didn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it was always going to end in tears, Kieran, wasn't it? I mean, I think I should have put money on it in hindsight, but unfortunately I didn't, and the inevitable kind of resulted. But Elon Musk is used to operating in business, right? Move fast and break things is the Silicon Valley mindset that Elon Musk has. Now, he certainly moved fast and broke things in the U.S. government. Unfortunately, one of the things he didn't break is the U.S. deficit. So he did a huge amount of damage, frankly, to a lot of programs, to the functioning of a lot of critical U.S. sort of state functions. He's killed a lot of people in Africa, frankly, through cuts to foreign aid indirectly, right? So this is quite a damaging period. But I think his hope in the medium term was that at least it would kind of reduce U.S. outlays and get the U.S. budget under control. But we aren't seeing that, right? We are just not seeing that. Government spending is up significantly over last year, right? So this really hasn't even scratched the surface, despite the damage it's done. And of course, it culminated in trying to codify some of these cuts into law through this one big, beautiful bill, which is, could you imagine a more Trumpian name for an act of Congress, which effectively extends the big tax cuts that Trump passed in his first term, extends them beyond, when they're going to expire in a couple of years for another 10 years, plus expands those tax cuts significantly to new areas like the, no tax on tips, which you probably remember from the election campaign. It does do a few offsetting spending cuts in some areas, but then, of course, it spends a bit more in other areas. And the bottom line, unfortunately, Kieran, is, and I think this is what has riled Elon Musk the most, is, if this bill is passed, US debt will go from 100% of GDP today up to 124% in 2035. And that's getting into kind of financial crisis territory. And obviously, that's what sort of sent Musk over the edge.
And you have also pointed out that it's a lesson that our policymakers need to watch closely when we look at our expenditure and debt levels.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Kieran. So if you go back to 2001, the US budget was in surplus, and US debt to GDP was in the low 30%, 32%, something like that. Australia's budget is currently at about 32% of GDP. It's debt, right? So, you wind the clock back 20 years and America looks very much like Australia. And then America got itself into a very big structural deficit, and it had a lot of political dysfunction. And that got it to where it is today, with debt at 100% of GDP, heading to 124%. And frankly, at, I would say, increasing risk of a sovereign debt crisis. So, is Australia there? No, we're far from that point. Will Australia be there in 5 years? No. But I wouldn't be surprised if in 20 years Australia finds itself in a similar situation if we don't get our fiscal house in order, right? And the trouble I see, Kieran, and I'm sure you notice this yourself, is there aren't any signs. The politicians aren't giving us any signal on either side, frankly, that they're serious about this. And if you don't start turning the ship soon, eventually you hit the iceberg.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.